All right, guys. Today we're going to talk to you about some kind of similar to our first Family 2 Ecotec video. Today we're going to talk about Ecotec Family 2 transmissions. So today we're going to kind of just go over some of the most basic information as far as what transmissions come with what vehicles. We're not really going to talk about upgrades too much today because that can go way far to right field. So we're just going to talk about what comes in what. So to start off, we're going to start off with your basics. Number one, we're going to have our
base model.
Oh yeah, that works fine.
Can't get any more basic.
Can't even talk about more basic than that. So our base model cars. So you're gonna have two different transmissions. Number one, these are throughout all the years of the base model cars, the 2.2 cars, and we've included the 2.4s. You're not base models, we get it USS and Sport guys, but it comes with two transmissions. The first one is the manual transmission, the 5-speed F23 transmission. It's Getrag. So the F23 transmission, pretty stout for what it is, has a pretty good design. Overall, fairly strong. Some LSJ guys actually swapped them in over the later transmission that we'll talk about in a minute. So that's number one. Has a lot of good options for it. They're in everything. They've been in GM cars since the J-bodies and Cavaliers and all that stuff.
Yeah, they're way more durable than people give them credit for too, as long as you take care of them. But that kind of, if you've noticed, is a general theme for the Ecotecs in general. And when you take care of them, most of the stuff is pretty reliable.
Exactly. So, a little side note too, there's a bajillion and a half different gear ratios for the F23. So, whatever you're trying to do, there's probably a gear ratio set up or your gear set that's gonna be perfect for your vehicle. So, keep that in mind. Next, the unfortunately a lot less durable automatic transmission for the 2.2 and 2.4. This one is the GM 4T45E.
I got rinsed the puke out of my mouth.
Oh. So unfortunately, guys, these transmissions, while they can handle pretty much anything you want to throw at them as far as...
You don't ever mod the car.
Yeah, or keep it naturally aspirated. Or some, times you can throw some forced induction at without too much of an issue. But unfortunately, the 1445, it's a 4-speed, and it's not known for being super strong. Unfortunately, parts get a little more rare. Axles are getting a little more rare.
They're not necessarily cheap to rebuild, and they're power robbers.
Yes. So guys, we're still in the era of the older style transmissions that drive a massive amount of power. If you take two identical base models, like you can take two 2007 Cobalts, and one's an automatic and one's a manual with the same exact mods, the manual one will win every time, especially in doing straight line stuff. It's a significant difference.
Tyler had compared to Mike's car at one time, which not identical, but pretty close mod list, and it was 170 on the manual train, 140 on the auto.
So that's to give you guys a good idea.
30 horse difference at that low of a power level.
Yeah, so that's to let you know, in a race between them, more time than not, the manual car is going to win, and then for holding power later down the line, unfortunately, the 4T45s have a kind of a hard limit. High 200s, maybe low 300s. They don't like to make more than that. They won't allow you to make more than that. And then
at least not for very long.
At least not for very long, and then they break. You kind of don't have an upgrade. So bad news for those, but just kind of give you guys the 2.2 and 2.4 guys. That's kind of what you got going on.
I don't know how involved it is, but I know multiple people have swapped their base models from auto to manual. Not saying I necessarily recommend it, but it has been done.
It can be done with enough time and enough know-how. Don't email us on that. All right, guys, so the next one is going to be for our higher level ones. So we're talking about the LSJ, the Saturn Ion Redline from 04 to 07, and the Cobalt SS Supercharged from 05 to 07. So every single one of these cars from the factory came with a Getrag F35 transmission.
That's it. That's all you get.
That's all you get. So
you can't drive a manual, you can't have the car.
Exactly. So the F35 is a stout transmission with great gearing. These have a 4.05 gear ratio set in these cars. It's a great transmission. The major downfall about them is why they kind of hit or miss on power is their design. Shaft design is a little weak on those. So people tend to break a gear or break second gear synchro, and that's kind of it.
Second gear synchros get grindy. I've seen fifth gear fail on a handful, but the biggest power related failure is third gear.
Yes. All of you sudden, if you hear the label, boom, scatter. A lot of times it's a lot of transmission stuff. So something to quickly touch on too, a lot of these Delta chassis vehicles, unfortunately GM put them out with wrong axle angles, since we're talking about transmissions.
Oh yeah.
So not to go too deep into that, so that's why we make things like our rotated trans mounts, especially for the F35 cars and F40 cars, but correct that. So that's why people get axle wobble and brake axles and stuff a lot when they wheel hop, and then they don't have the rotated mount, or you lower the car too much. So keep that in mind, just a little sidebar note for that. All right, so from the LSJ, technically the next cars up are our Kappa chassis vehicles. So starting in 07 through 2010, yep, we have the two transmissions that the Kappa chassis vehicles come with. Number one, you have your 5-speed manual AR5. That transmission is actually used in slingshots still. Obviously used through all years of the Kappa. Pretty stout transmission, very weird gear ratios. For those of you that race, you know the third to fourth drop is really massive for some reason.
It is a very odd gear ratio.
It is
split.
a very, very weird gear.
They definitely wanted the car to be fun for first, second, and third.
Yeah, and then you go from you're beating it up in third, you go to fourth, and so it's really, really strange, but still fun, still very capable vehicles, especially if you're making some good power on them, like Trevor Sky. This transmission that should hold up fairly well.
I mean, guys, the V8 swap the Kappas, a lot of them stay with that transmission. The same transmission with the few differences is used in the Colorado Canyon H3. People tow moderate to light loads with them and have no issues. It seems to be a pretty solid transmission all around. It just really wasn't used in a lot of different applications.
Not a lot of stuff at all. So that's one. For the next transmission that the cars came with from 07 to 2010 is your 5L40. That is your 5-speed automatic transmission found in the Pontiac Solstice and the Saturn Sky. Again, both the 2.4 and the LNF 2.0. So both of those transmissions, unfortunately, the automatics are still kind of, we're in that age, or they sap a lot of power and they can't really hold a lot of power either.
There's one person I know of in Ohio that's drag racing on Autotrans, and he's doing well so far, but I don't know his power level or what his current times are. But he's the only person I know of that's even attempting to push through the auto.
Yeah, it's a thing, guys. So unfortunately, you guys can see the common theme of, in this we're still in the time period of the auto transmission is usually the worst idea, which is a little bit different than how transmissions are now, versus sometimes the auto is the better idea. But for making power, reliability, and everything else, unfortunately the main one is the better one. I did forget to mention the Pontiac G5s are for the 2.2 and 2.4 cars. Those are also with those, and the HHRs for the base model cars.
And
Saturn Ion.
That's right.
So, the last one we're going to talk about is our LNF vehicles. So, the two main vehicles in this one are going to be the 2008-2010 Chevy Cobalt SS turbocharged and the 2008 to 2010 Chevrolet HHR SS. We'll talk about the HHR first.
Should have mentioned that earlier.
Oh, I know. So, guys, the HHR SS came with two different transmissions, and they're actually different than the Cobalt LNF ones. So, the HHR SS came with the same transmission that the LSJ Cobalt and Saturn Ion Redline did. These cars come with the F35 4.05 gear set transmission. 5-speed manual still kind of the same issues as before. A little more compounded, as the HHR is a little heavier, and the LNS make torque just like that.
Yeah.
So, issues are a little more compounded with them, but they still make power just as good. And you can push the cars to conceivably as far as you want to go with them without any sort of issues. Now, unfortunately, and it's kind of funny because GM mentioned this, we have the next transmission that the HHRSS came with, and that is the 1445 again, just like in the base model cars. Yeah. So, unfortunately, guys, GM actually rated these lower. So if you look at a manual HHRSS, they came with 260 horsepower, 260 pound-feet of torque. The automatic ones, unfortunately, came with 212 horsepower and I believe 200 foot-pounds of torque. So they even rated them much less from the factory. And just like Al mentioned earlier, they robbed significant amounts of power.
And I've tuned and driven a couple auto HHRSs, and they're okay. They're just not performance car guy friendly.
Not at all. So, guys, just for a quick kind of idea, we've made well over 500 horsepower on HHRSSs many times with the manual transmissions. I think the record for like a S257, E85, and all your big power ones right now on an auto is like 330. which
Pretty
is
bad.
essentially what a bolt-on tune stock turbo can do on a manual car. And even on a big turbo upgrade, they're only getting like 250 to the tires. So auto HHR guys, when you come to us for a build, just know that in general, usually you get a little less horsepower. So kind of keep that in mind. All right, so for the final transmission we're going to talk about, say the best for last, is you're going to have the Cobalt SS turbocharged, and that came with another F35, but a different one. It came with a 3.82 gear ratio transmission. I personally love this transmission for a turbo step. It works very well. It has, nice tall gearing, great gas mileage. Unfortunately though, the lower that final drive number is, that 382, the weaker the trans is. So, right from the factory, GM rates it at 260 wheel torque. Or I'm sorry, it rates it right at 260 torque. Unfortunately, that's what the car comes with stock. So anything from there, you're kind of rolling the dice.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the ratio better in the LNF F35. Well, probably because I'm a turbo car fan.
Yep.
And it does spread the gears out a little bit, and seems to just be a little more pleasant to drive, especially if you're doing like some highway cruising, stuff like that. But like Ryan mentioned, it just kind of amplifies the Achilles heel that the F35 has, and you're going to end up with gear problems if you're trying to push big power.
Yep. So unfortunately, just kind of name of the game. So as you kind of see, a lot of transmissions in these platforms, aside from the Kappa, unfortunately they kind of have their kind of issues. In another video, we'll talk about upgrades you can possibly do for them. But for now, this is just a good informational video so you guys know what trans come with what vehicles, and essentially what you're getting into and what it should have when you purchase it. So I think that's all for today, guys. I'm Ryan D at ZZP.
I'm Al.
We'll see you next time.